The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that can help us thrive in our lives. We have a very special guest for you today. His name is Andrew Ysasi, and he's from Vital Records Control, and he's going to talk about how important his business is to your digital business. Thank you for being here, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I wanted you on my show for a while, and we've been friends. And I realized the importance, now that I have my media company, the importance of data. How do you store it? And the best thing, the worst thing I have experienced for myself is I don't label it right, I don't store it right, and so when I go to retrieve it, all I do is search for things. And I'm sure other businesses do the same, but that's a smaller scale. So let's talk about, what you do and what your company does that can help, I guess, businesses function better to be able to be more productive. Right?
Well, thank you for having me on your show.
Yes.
I appreciate it. So Vital Records Control has been around since 1988, and they grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. They're here in West Michigan through an acquisition of Kent Record Management, who I was employed with prior.
Right.
And Kent Record Management had been around since the early 80s, serving the clients of most of Michigan. We had 4 locations. And the industry as a whole started with storing records, paper records. And that industry largely came from World War II and the war effort, where a lot of paper was created and the federal government had to store paper.
So what, there was just warehouses?
Warehouses full of paper, exactly.
Okay.
And then corporations caught on and started creating paper, and then printers became something you could buy, and anything that could put ink on paper was created. And this is all really before the digital side. So paper just proliferated, and still today, paper continues to grow as far as what is being printed on it, along with data. Now, we saw a slowdown, of course, with the pandemic. But again, as printers are out there putting content on information, putting information on paper, that paper has to go somewhere, whether it gets stored, file cabinet, or shredded. And that's where companies like Vital Records Control has continued to help not only the clients that they serve in various industries, but the individuals that can take advantage of that too.
Okay, so talk about a little bit, of course, I always relate everything to your home. And especially being a small little business as I am, we are getting bogged down with information that we have to keep, that we are afraid to throw away because we might need it. But I would imagine companies today are dealing with, HR. They need to keep information, employee records. What do you mean by, storage? Is it like everything everything that comes out of your company that you could store that and you guys decide? What exactly can you do to help us be more efficient here?
Sure. So with paper, it wasn't easy, but at least you had one media, maybe some backup tapes and other digital devices to keep track of. And you mentioned something about home storage. And one of the things that we as individuals think of with storage and how long we have to keep it is our tax records. Most people think 7 years. That's how long we keep our tax records. After 7 years, you're able to purge that information and keep on storing, and until you have the following year, then you eliminate the records from 7 years prior. With organizations, there could be, depending on your industry, thousands of retention requirements, whether it's other countries, our country, state, local laws that you have to comply with and make decisions on how long you have to keep some of that information. And for the most part, it's to not only comply with whether laws or regulations that are out there, so there's a risk element to it, lowering risk, but there's also a cost-saving element too, because purging information you no longer need to keep can help you save costs, whether it's physical records like paper, or it's stored in cloud services or on on-premise storage devices.
Well, wouldn't you think with the with the pandemic, and now a lot of people are virtual now, right? And they have more employees, so they're actually able to grow because they don't have to build the big buildings, but they still have the data. When you talk to each staff executives when you come in, what are their idea what they think should they keep? See, the problem is, it's what I think is important to my department, I'm going to keep it. But do I know what Bob needs that needs to be, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So how many, would the employees all have a different answer if you came in and you asked them, what should we keep and why we should keep that?
Sure. There's a maturity model that the industry has in records management. ARMA International actually came up with this maturity model that I'll reference, and there's that part or level 1, which is really ad hoc, like you described, where no one really knows how long to keep something, or maybe you have one individual who says one thing versus another. And then there's transformational, and a lot of that maturity has to deal with the initial thought of, from an executive typically, of we need to have someone who's in charge of records management, put a program in place, put a policy in place, and actually manage our records and distill that information down, not only to the physical but also digital assets that we know of within our organization, but then extend that on to our entire digital ecosystem, which includes vendors as well, where information could be stored elsewhere, or private cloud storage, et cetera. So that is a heavy lift for organizations to get there. But typically, that's a result of a driver from regulatory, or it's the cost side of we need to make an investment in these types of programs to reduce not only our risk, but also our long-term costs of storing this information, because it could just be untenable after a while.
Well, and I think that even your home gets bogged down.
Absolutely.
Like when we set up this interview, I said, can I bring some recycled? And I looked at all of my shredding I needed. I mean, I've stored, it's been about a year, and I just had piles of it. I don't even know what it all is, but basically it's just important information, and of course we need to have it shredded.
Right.
So it's not just a box, but companies, I know when, you're gonna laugh at this, when I used to be in the corporate world back in the early 2000s, we used to take our backup data, and each executive had to take it home one day. So you took it off site. Can you just imagine?
Sure.
On that one, and you had to come back. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you now that the whole world has changed. Let's talk a little bit about what would you do what type of company are you looking for? What is it that you service? And what does that process look like when you go into it?
Sure. So you mentioned shredding. That's important. There's an aspect to the company that certainly does have on-site shredding and mobile, what's called mobile shredding, or plant-based shredding, where there's bins that are picked up with materials that need to be shredded. But what's important about the shredding function is really two things that I definitely talk to a lot of people about. Is one, it's good to have defensible disposition or destruction in place. That way, if you're ever asked to produce something that was destroyed per a retention policy, you have now, hopefully, a certificate of destruction to show that that information is no longer available. Every digital and physical copy has been destroyed. It's not available. So that helps you from a compliance standpoint.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It shows that you're
That is
actually,
nice.
it actually shows that you're following your retention policy. Otherwise, it's just, smoke and mirrors, right? On the other side, there's the sustainability element, where if you can recycle information and that gets shredded down, that had confidential information, and it no longer has it, you can take that paper and recycle that and repurpose it. So there's two benefits of the shredding side, and that's something that Vital Records Control helps our clients with as well. To get started as an individual, most of our sites you can do a walk-in for shredding.
Okay.
There's a per pound rate. If you're a corporate client, then typically there's programs, whether they're bins or on-site shredding, and you would have to speak with one of our local salespeople to figure out what that looks like and set up schedules and things of that nature.
Now you have, but you could bring in a bin and you come and pick it up every month, like shredding too?
Yes, so just like with your at home, we do that home analogy, right? So just like at home, you put your trash out every week, maybe once a month, depending on the volume, we would come and pick up a bin that would have paper that's not shredded it would be in a locked bin, and that bin would then be securely transported to one of our shredding facilities.
So how do you know when, I mean, do you go in and you can assess if what information actually needs to be kept? I mean, you working with the executives there or whatever, this is, you know, when employees look at that, this is vital. I mean, to me, so we used to have duplicates of everything.
Sure.
On that one because somebody else saved it and somebody else wanted to keep it. I mean, when you come in, I mean, share a little bit how you can save for efficiency, like you mentioned, the metrics of what to do with that the information, because there's too much.
Yeah, there is. Well, and that's where records management in some ways hit a ceiling of they were only able to do so much because the explosion of digital content that was out there, they had a hard enough time keeping up with the physical records, let alone just the digital side.
I know.
So there is now, fortunately, more guidance on that now. There's a concept that's called information governance that now has an ISO standard as of May 2022 that incorporates not just records management, but privacy functions, technology, cybersecurity, records information management, audit, business operations, and of course the legal side, all under one umbrella, which should have board guidance and to create initiatives around that. So instead of your records policy, you have an information governance policy. So it addresses all of the data that has been created, all the data that will be created, and regardless of where it's stored and who potentially has ownership of it, even if it's your data and you've provided a custodian to take care of it, whether it's in a warehouse or in a third party, that you have now some strategic initiatives to address the growth and the management of that information. And the other piece of information governance that I think a lot of organizations will benefit from is, and we've talked about risk management, we've talked about cost reduction, it's the value of the information that you have. What value have you not garnered from that information that you may not know is there? So that's where the intention of business intelligence or using data analytics to make better business decisions with the information you have. So that's where information governance really is different than traditional records management, but it also takes those silos down to require everyone to really work together to understand what that entire digital footprint looks like.
What do you find out when you go in? Okay, because I look at you and I would think you have this mass of employees because you got all this storage and trying to just organize it. And that's probably the worst that people do is they don't organize that information for easy, so somebody else can come through and find it. Nothing nicer that you find, like the pair of scissors are in the same spot, right?
Right.
You're like, instead of, yesterday we're working on a big project in our home and just finding stuff. We spent hours and hours looking for things instead of wanting to go out. But all right, so I want to talk about business, but that was just, I always bring it back down to real life because I know it's like that in companies.
Indexing is incredibly important. You have to have an indexing plan for sure.
Yeah, and you guys help them with that, or how does that work?
Absolutely. So with our physical records, there's a system, of course, that we at Kent Records use barcodes, but at Vital Records Control, we use RFID tags. And the indexing of those boxes within the system can help not only us, but the client identify what contents are in that box. It's no different than naming a file you would upload to your personal cloud or to save to your downloads folder, wherever you save information to make sure that information is identified, indexed properly so you know what it is. And there are tools that will, at least on the digital side, will help you with artificial intelligence to organize and auto-classify information.
Right.
But as many technologists will know, that artificial intelligence is not 100%. You still need an individual or maybe a business owner or someone who functions in the organization to be able to help identify and teach that artificial intelligence how to index information.
You got robots going around at your place? Do you? I mean, I think I can see just rows of computer you're securing, right?
I haven't met any robots, nor do I know of anyone who is been classified as an employee, whether they're W-2 or not. I don't know that, but I do know we have machines that will help recognize the RFID tags and things of that nature. But the robots that really I'm referring to, it's more algorithms running on systems that make those decisions, not actual robots.
I can see that coming, right? I kind of, with
Maybe.
the rows and rows of data, like you said, we're in I think, an explosion of data, beyond, especially after the pandemic, with everybody, being at home and what to do with that data. You got to transfer data. What's important, what's not. With home employees. What about the overseas? What do you see, like having people have access to your company's data that you don't know?
Sure. So overseas, depending on where you go, in many cases, when it comes to private information, or individuals' information about an individual, Europe, for example, and other countries have far more advanced privacy laws than we have here in the United States. We do have a Privacy Act here that was enacted in the early 70s, and currently the last I knew, there was an updated federal privacy regulation that was going to go into effect. But there's still some hang-ups, and that's a bipartisan effort, ironically, considering the political landscape here in the U.S. But the most, I would say, advanced or mature privacy law here that a state has is California, and other states like Connecticut, Virginia, Texas have come along. So when you talk about how overseas not only access or store information, whether we're storing it from overseas or not, there's a lot of privacy elements that need to be understood about, especially if it's individual information.
Right.
What are we storing? Where is it going to be? How is it getting accessed? And if it were to become compromised, how do we report that? How do we handle that? That's a big function that typically privacy officers in their programs will oversee, and that's where they work together with records management providers and records management individuals to make sure that there's an understanding of what we have, how long we need to keep it, because if there is a breach of information and it was older than what it needed to be kept, that can be an issue. But if it's currently in retention, there might be some additional protections that are required for personally identifiable information. If it's not personally identifiable information, if it's not individuals' information, then it's less restrictive as far as where that information is or how it goes. But in my experience, it's hard pressed to be able to find an organization that can separate out personal information from maybe operational or machine information that doesn't identify an individual. It can be very difficult because a lot of that information is very mixed in. Just like with a box of paper, a lot of that paperwork could be a project, and you're going to have people's names in there, and you're going to have, diagrams or other things. It's all going to be intermixed. So unless you've taken that effort to separate out individual information, which many people don't do, then you almost have to treat it like it is personally identifiable information.
Having systems in place, I have a real appreciation with a director of operations. I used to think, they're not very creative, they're not, and then you realize that they're one of the key things to get everything done properly and compliance. But when you go into a business and you guys are the first time, what do you mostly notice? That they have no idea how much data they have, how much it's everywhere, that nobody knows where to grab? What is some of the things?
So for me, I know our sales process when it comes to physical records and shredding, for example, or maybe even converting from paper to electronic, those conversations can be held with people at the operational or tactical layer of an organization. Sometimes facilities will handle the shredding pickups. Sometimes the human resources may be responsible for what records go offsite, because as we spoke about prior, human resource records have all sorts of personally identifiable information. The medical information for those employees have to be separate, from some of their other files. So they tend to be without a formal records structure. The HR folks tend to be the ones who are responsible for that. For me, I typically speak with the either business executives, the corporate counsels, or the IT senior leadership, and really just start to probe where they are as far as where they feel maturity-wise is with retention and disposition of information. Because what I've found is that most organizations, especially with IT folks, they're bright people. They have frameworks they're following, they've got controls they're following, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But there can be a gap at times when it comes to retention and disposition. Unless there's a retention person on staff where that's their job, sometimes it's kind of acquired by someone because they know something, whether it's they're a power user of a certain system or because they set up the network, it's now their responsibility to know these thousands of potential requirements and be able to attach that to the records that are there. So that's where I start to talk about, what's the operational benefit of doing that? Where are the potential cost savings of applying retention? And then further, what business value is there that could potentially be mined that currently isn't being mined? So I have this belief that, and I tell this to some of my students, that if you can be a great employee, don't think of yourself as being a cost center of saying, well, this is how much it's going to cost the company to have me do my job. If you can essentially either produce revenue or save costs, then people tend to listen to you a little more, because now it's like, well, anytime I talk to him or her or them, it's going to save me money or generate money for me.
When you're speaking to them, then with your business,
right? Or help me keep the money that I have. That's where I start talking to some folks at very higher levels. It's like, tell me how to keep what I have,
right?
Instead of having it be taken away by somebody. So there's some risk management concepts that get up even.
When you're looking at businesses today that are all, some people watching and like, okay, what would you, if you were in a room full of executives and they were just learning the importance of, vital records and what they can do to help their staff be more productive so they can make more money by accessing information. And I think it also put it at ease, that everything's ease, that things are being stored correctly. That's got to be the best thing. It's kind of like going down to your filing cabinet and having it look perfect and you're just like this. But what are some of the key things you can do to help them to be, to make more money and to be able to get that information?
So yeah, I think the primary recommendations I typically have are, understanding what risk is and knowing what your risk profile is and making sure you have an understanding of how to reduce your risk through your information management practices. The other is the cost, understanding what your expenses are as it relates to the information you currently have, but also the information that you're going to be producing. That is something that needs to be watched, not only from a line item of operational expenses, but what you're paying through subscriptions, et cetera. And then the final, which, as I mentioned, was probably one of the best opportunities, would be mining the information you currently have to make better business decisions. And doing that in an ethical way and a responsible way, that to me is really an area that I know some organizations have been doing for a long time, but a lot of other organizations, especially small organizations, haven't begun to really look at that. So
tell me a little bit more about that, ethical, when you talk that
okay,
way.
so let's say, for example, you probably have heard through discussions when you're on your phone or you're having a conversation with a friend, and then you go check your social media, and maybe you were talking about shampoo, and all of a sudden you have ads showing up for shampoo
yes.
in your feeds or what have you. So there could be ways, let's say if you work for a grocer, there could be ways to track not only purchases that are done throughout the year, but be able to identify what types of products you would need within stores at certain times of the year and what locations would best be sold. And you can do that with the sales data that you've generated.
Right.
So you can predict what type of, like for example, Thanksgiving, everyone knows you need to have turkeys and all the things that you would have to have more. So. But there might be areas that maybe they don't celebrate Thanksgiving like others do. Maybe it's a predominant, there's a lot of immigrants in a certain area, so you wouldn't want to overstock turkeys there, so you put something else there.
Okay.
Or maybe there is a beach town that uses more beach items throughout the year. You would want to put more beach there. Instead of relying on Pamela, who's the awesome employee there, to say, do this, you actually have data to be able to support that as well.
Well, yeah, that makes perfect sense, and you guys help with that.
Well, I help bring awareness to that, and
Okay.
that's where VRC figures out where they need to be in that process. So if we have the data and we have information under our care that you've given us the responsibility, we can help with how to take information out of that to make you make better decisions.
Well, I'm sure executives would like that.
Yes, but it goes beyond just what we have. It's the entire digital ecosystem.
The whole ego, okay.
Yeah, right.
So what type of, I know you're located where? Byron Center?
I'm located in Northwest Grand Rapids.
Northwest. Okay, so wasn't there a Byron Center address? Maybe I thought I looked it up wrong. Where are you? Where is your company exactly?
So the Vital Records Control, my office is located off Waldorf. We're just south of Meyer Corporate,
Okay.
off of 3 Mile.
And how many employees do you have there?
At that location, gosh, I'm not sure anymore. I'm not there as much because I'm on the road, but I would say we've probably around 25, 30 employees. But organization-wide, we have over 100 facilities and about 1,200 employees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And I saw that you mentioned something about a nonprofit. What was
Oh,
what
the
was that?
Institute of Certified Records Managers is the credentialing arm for the industry. So if you want to be a certified records manager, I am the president of the association of the institute that certifies those individuals. So there's 5 exams, the multiple choice exams, and 2 written case studies you have to reply to become a certified records
And that's
manager.
a nonprofit?
And that's, it's a nonprofit association, and it's been around since '75. So.
You have a heart for any other nonprofits that you? Because I know a lot of people in the nonprofits. I always liked which ones, if there's a company that's really interested in a certain nonprofit. Let's just say March of Dimes. And things that we just have a heart for March of Dimes. There's many people I meet that have a heart for veterans. Yep. They give to those organizations. So when you said nonprofit, it just kind of caught my attention.
Well, VRC is very involved and has been with St. Jude's Children's Hospital for quite some time because of the location in Memphis and our HQ there. So that's a big one. I know for me personally, the ARMA International Education Foundation that helps individuals who oftentimes find this profession. They don't necessarily graduate high school and think, I want to go and be a records manager. They have a great program to help people pay for their certifications and their education once they want to become a certified records manager or certify in records management. So I've done some work with those folks there at the ARMA International Education Foundation.
Okay. And are you hired? You need employees? How's it going there?
I would defer that question to our Director of Operations
I
here.
would just put a plug if anybody,
Sure, yeah. Our Director of Operations here locally, typically he's the one who would look for employees. And on our HQ, there could be some jobs that are posted on our website as well.
Okay. Well, you never know when somebody's watching and it's like, you know what? It sounds like a really kind of interesting, a job,
Sure.
position.
Mm-hmm.
I love, and it looks like it's a growing company and it's got some, future growth there. So I'd be going, well, maybe that would be something I could, think about doing.
There really isn't anyone I wouldn't be willing to talk to about this kind of stuff. If you haven't already noticed, I kind of love this stuff. So
I can tell.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah,
Right.
I've been in it for so long. It's just I just really enjoy it because I've seen the benefit. I've seen people reap the benefits of when they really intentionally try to have not only records management but then branch into information governance. How big of a difference it makes for not only them professionally but also their organizations. It's hard not to enjoy it.
Well, it is, and I will just tell you, and to bring it down to my level when you talk all this stuff, it's like, I understand it. I just had a professional organizer come through my home yesterday,
Sure, yeah.
helping me, and I tell you what, it's just the weight of, it was just this, it's an emotional weight when you know you need to get this stuff done, but you don't know where to start,
Sure.
and having somebody come in and do it, and in 2 days, we were just like, and I walked through now, and it's like everything's organized, and our basement's organized. It's just a great feeling.
It's a good feeling,
Yes.
and the trick is keeping it that way, right?
Yes, the trick
Yes.
is, but it's a lot, maintenance is a lot easier than chaos.
That's right. Right.
Maintenance
You have to make that investment to want to become organized, and then you can reap the benefits of it.
That's right, exactly. Okay, anything else you'd like to tell our audience that about your company that I didn't ask you? Because I'm looking at your questions, and I probably missed 1 or 2, but is there anything that you'd like to share?
That's okay, no problem. So if you're looking to work closer with Vital Records Control, you can contact me, or you can check out our website at vrcnetwork.com or vitalrecordscontrol.com.
I want to thank Andrew for being here today.
Thank you, Pamela.
You can find that information, and if you'd like to if you're nervous about maybe that you have a mess to clean up, you're the guy that can come in and tell you, you know what, we can easily get this in order. I'm telling you, for someone that just hired an organizer, it is an amazing feeling when you can walk in and know that you got the basics done and you can handle the rest. So thank you so much for being here. This is Pamela Keim from Grantat Media Business TV, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everyone.
The opinions expressed in the preceding program are those of the producer and not necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.